Welcome to the Healing Insight podcast, episode 2, with me, Sarah Hunt.
And me, Jez Hunt.
Hello, and today we thought we'd give you some insight into what disease is. So, as an ex-nurse, I spent a lot of years looking at different diseases within a medical context, which has given me a lot of background information to assist me now. But when I went on to my healing journey, I started to look at disease from a different angle. So, Jay, what does disease mean to you?
To me, with my from my journey, so only really in the last seven or so, actually a bit longer than that, but that sort of number of years, then for me, it's the manifestation of an underlying problem. So there is an underlying, in my mind, there's an underlying emotional, energetic problem, which, because it's not been dealt with, manifests itself in some physical manifestation in the body.
Yeah, to me, it's being at dis-ease with yourself. So I like when I'm teaching my students to actually put a hyphen between dis and ease, just to highlight the fact that it's about being at dis-ease with yourself. And I feel that we've got very clever bodies. I don't know about yours, but mine certainly is. And what the body does is actually tell us when we're at dis-ease with ourselves. But my understanding is that we've forgotten how to listen to our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it means that we look outside of ourselves to address the issues rather than going inward. And the body is actually, it'll give you a little pain and it's saying, hello, you need to look at something's making you feel uncomfortable. And it's very easy to go and take a paracetamol and push that pain away and forget about it. A little bit down the road, the body goes, hello, wakey, wakey, there's something you need to look at here, and your pain gets worse. And you still ignore it until it gets to a point where your body's really screaming at you. And I know I'm making light of this, but actually our bodies talk to us and we've forgotten how to listen to them.
Yeah. No, I agree. If I look back, some of the things that I've been ill with over the years, years when I was younger, then it was very much a case of, it's just a headache, it's just a pain, it's just whatever it might be, and then just ignore it. Whereas now, certainly now, if anything going on, it's like, okay, what's actually happening? Where is it happening? And I'm much more aware, without going into it right now, we're much more aware of what my body is actually doing, what the feelings and sensations are, in terms of, okay, there's something going on here I need to address, need to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to understand as well that often there's been a trauma of some sort. And it may not be immediately prior to developing symptoms of some kind of disease, but it could be several years before, or even something that happened in childhood that's kind of festering away under the surface. And because you haven't addressed it, it then manifests into a physical or mental health issue, where your soul and your body is really trying to wake you up to the fact that there's something going on that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And with mindset, I'm sorry, just come to mind is when I'm talking to clients, then quite often if we're looking at something that's holding them back. So, for example, anxiety. They're struggling with anxiety over. It might be from a presenting point of view, anxiety over doing a presentation online in front of a load of people. Typically, there is a underlying event that happened, a significant emotional event that happened at some point in their past, which they then associated with a fear of being in front of people. And it might be, oh, I don't know, it could be anything. It could be that as a kid that they decided to do like a little performance, just singing and dancing and messing around as kids do, and in front of a group of adults or something, and somebody dismissed it, or just, oh, don't be silly, don't do that now. Or it could be anything like that. It's a very
Yeah.
simplistic example, but it's that underlying thing that stays there. And when we don't address it, and to be fair, most of us don't realize it's there and that that's what it is, to be able to address it. But if we don't address it, that over life, as we get older and life progresses, it becomes bigger and a bigger and bigger and bigger problem, because we're not actually addressing the root cause of it. If anything, and particularly with Western medicine, it's very much about dealing with the symptoms, not focused on actually trying to get to the root of what the problem actually is.
Absolutely. And that's what I found with healing is, and the more that I've worked with cosmic heart and the deeper I've been able to go into the energy, um, I've really come to understand the importance of getting to the root cause of the issue. And it's important, I think, as well, to understand that something that was a trauma for you might not be a trauma for somebody else. And the way that you react to a situation that happened to you, whenever it was on your journey, would create points of reference for you, that if I was in that same situation, because my journey's been different to yours, I might not have that same reaction, and therefore I wouldn't have the same points of reference. And so that trauma wouldn't affect me in the same way as it would affect you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. We filter stuff. There've been times when you and I've had discussions in the past where we've talked about events or things that happened during our childhood, and we both remember the situation being as a completely different event. It's almost like we're at two completely different events. And so we filter stuff based on experiences, our beliefs, our values, and that then kind of dictates, or can dictate, how we then view things moving forwards. So yeah, if so you can have two people, like you said, two people in the same situation, two children, brother sister, growing up together and having two completely different experiences, but from the same experience.
Yes, exactly. And that um will trigger different stuff in them, and that will go back to the whole journey that they've actually had. So it may be that something from a past life has been triggered in them, that's then creates a situation that affects their perspective of what's going on in their life, and their perspective of how they make their decisions and how they move forward. Or it could trigger something else from even from being in the womb,
Mm-hmm.
being aware of stuff going on around them while they were growing in their mother's womb, triggering anxieties and energies and emotions around that experience as well. There's so many different things that can affect us, that I think we aren't aware of, and the emotions that we experience, people often push them down. And I would say probably men more than women. I don't want to sound as if I'm being sexist here, but women seem to find it easier to release some of their emotions, at least. Whereas I feel for men and for boys, it's, don't be a wuss, boys don't cry, all that sort of thing goes, but it does go on, doesn't it? And that then affects the way that things are stored within us.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much traditional societal. You go back to sort of Edwardian times, it was very much a case of, no, you don't show any emotion. You're a man, you're strong, stop, and it's just so wrong, because if you're not releasing the emotion, and emotion, energy in motion is one
Yeah,
definition of that.
absolutely.
But if you're not releasing that energy, if you're not allowing it to flow through you, and then therefore you're holding it in, you're pushing it down, then you're holding that emotion inside you, and it needs to go somewhere. It needs to do something. And if you're holding it, that's why things like stress and that can trigger physical reactions in the body, because the energy of the emotion hasn't gone anywhere. It's just stuck inside you.
Absolutely. And that's why things like accidents happen as well. It's because there be some kind of fear that you've stuffed down inside of you. And for me, one that's a really good example is where I got attacked and bitten by a big dog last year. And I'm a big dog lover. I've had dogs for years. Um, but this happened to me, and I ended up with a really nasty leg wound. Um, and what I realized was that I'd got a deep fear of big dogs attacking me that had sat deep within me from probably eons ago. But as it had surfaced, what that had done, because I hadn't recognized that it was there, I hadn't understood that it was there, I actually attracted that into my life because it needed to be lifted out and cleared. And I think it's, people don't realize why things happen to them. And it's usually because it's old stuff that's sitting deep in their energy that's like a magnet, drawing those experiences into them to bring it to their attention, because it's something that really needs to be addressed, or it's going to cause them other problems.
Yeah, actually, it just reminded me. We manifest. I believe we manifest all the time. And so you're saying about manifesting that. So that thing surfaced, and therefore you manifested that situation. But if we are manifesting all the time, which I believe we are, then if we're focused on negative stuff, we're going to manifest negative stuff. If we focus on positive stuff, we're more likely to manifest positive stuff.
I would want to take that a bit further. Excuse me, butting
No,
in
no,
there.
please do. That's the joys of the podcast.
Because I've had clients that have come to me and said, I don't understand what's happening. All these awful things keep happening to me. And yet I'm a positive person. And I pick myself up and I dust myself down and I carry on again. And then something else smacks me. And I certainly went through that a bit in the probably sort of in the earlier years. So in my sort of 20s and 30s. Um, and what I've come to understand is that if you've got something sitting deep within you that you don't realize that's there, then you will, however positive you are, if that needs to go, if that needs to be addressed, then you will magnetize that negative, what appears to be a negative experience, into you, because your soul is telling you and the universe is telling you that that needs to be addressed and it needs to be healed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense, because it's not necessarily at the conscious level. I mean, I've had clients that have said, "Oh, well, we'll do affirmations. We'll do affirmations. We'll be positive. We'll be positive," and it doesn't work. In air quotes, it doesn't work for them. Now, you and I both know that affirmations, being positive, and focusing on creating a positive state of energy will definitely help and work for you. But if you've got something at a subconscious level, or if you've got something deep down, like you say, deep down where you're not actually aware that it's there even, then your subconscious mind is trying to keep you safe. So it might not be making you aware of it consciously, but it's still there and still needs to be dealt with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, if you, this is why I feel some people struggle with changing things in their lives. It's because they don't realize that on some level they're at disease with themselves, and so they put the changes in place, but they can't actually make them stay, if that makes sense. So the number of times I've seen people at New Year with their New Year's resolutions, and it lasts for 3 or 4 weeks, and then they go back to how they were before. And to me, as a healer, that's because the energy that needs shifting out of the way for them to make that change is is stronger than their ability to change things. It's kind of like that energy pulls them back to how they were before, because they haven't actually addressed the issues that are stopping them from making that change.
Yeah. From a sort of conscious point of view, the mindset point of view as well, people don't have a strong enough why. So change is hard. I mean, change happens all the time. We can't avoid it. But if you're intentionally trying to change something, then that's hard. It's not, and we naturally go down the path of, if we don't force ourselves, if you like, we will go down the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance is what we're used to, what we're staying within our comfort zone. So change is hard if you want to change something. So New Year's resolutions, you've got to be pretty determined and have the right why and the reason behind you're doing it. I've seen so many people, where, myself included, over the years, where they wanted to go out smoking. They do the whole New Year's resolution thing, or even if they do it in the middle of the year, it doesn't have to be New Year, and they'll get through a few weeks, a few months, maybe even a couple of years, and then they fall back and end up smoking again. When I stopped 4 years ago, I haven't touched one since. I'm not. There's been no desire, no drive, no fallback, because my why at that time, the reason I was doing it, was the right one for me at a soul or energetic level. Does that make
But
sense?
also it was because we did a bit of work on this together, didn't we? And it was getting to the root cause of why you were smoking in the
In
first
the first
place.
place, yeah.
And once that had actually gone, the smoking stopped,
Yeah.
and it stopped pretty quickly, really, didn't it? So yeah, and to me, something like smoking is an indication that somebody is at dis-ease with themselves, and they're struggling to actually deal with what's coming up to the surface. They don't like the feeling of it. They don't understand what it is. So they use the smoking to push it back down again,
Yeah.
to push it back down out of the way. And maybe because the fear within them is that they're going to experience whatever that trauma or that feeling or that fear or the fixed false beliefs are that they've pushed down inside them again, and they don't want to experience that because it was painful before. um, but actually, if it sits there deep within them, it's gradually festering away, creating greater problems than actually just allowing it to be released and gone out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So what's really interesting, as I mentioned, I did nursing years ago, and I've always had quite a medical sort of perspective on disease until recently. And things with Cosmic Heart have been evolving, which makes a lot of sense to me because we're all evolving. And the way that I've been asked to look at energy healing has evolved again recently. And now I've been asked to look at disease as a set of symptoms that show us that we are at disease with ourselves. And this suddenly made so much sense because every person's journey is different. So you can have um, two or three people that are all diagnosed with diabetes, for example, who all have similar symptoms. But actually, when it comes to the healing work that needs doing, on whatever level that is, they all have different things that actually need to be addressed and cleared for them to help them to reduce their symptoms and to move forward on their journeys. So that's been quite a change for me, having always been quite sort of medically focused with disease and the way that that everything is labeled when you've got a set of symptoms. And now I've needed to shift, and the people that I teach Cosmic Heart are now being shown the need to look at things from perspective of a group of symptoms. So you're not that disease, and I think that's another change in perspective. So I've had issues with a trapped nerve recently, and um, I'm experiencing symptoms of the dis-ease of having a trapped nerve. So I'm not that trapped nerve. I don't have a trapped nerve. I'm experiencing symptoms of it. And that changes the way that you look at it. It's kind of like there's not so much ownership of it, if that makes sense. And so you're not manifesting more of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have I made that clear? Does that
Yeah.
sound?
That's clear to me.
Yeah, good.
So, so, um, from, yeah, I mean, so echoing that, but slightly different from what I do with clients. I could have 3 or 4 people all coming to me presenting with not good enough. I'm not good enough. Now, and that could um, uh, present itself in many, many different ways. But even though that underlying not good enough is a thing that individual believes about themselves because of the beliefs and values and everything that's happened to them, then the root cause of that, or what we ultimately end up need to work with, is not just, it's not that person is not good enough. It's just a story that they're telling themselves. It's a story that they've adopted, or what am I trying to say? It's like being a character in a play. They've put themselves in this character of someone who's not good enough, and all we need to do is change the character. But we need to do it in my mind, at a mental and an energetic level. So it's not just so. Yes, we can work on the energy side of it, which you do obviously do with what you do, and I work with the energy side of it to a degree. But for me, in terms of, so like we were saying before, people don't necessarily realize that there's a problem. Then I help people realize that there's a problem.
Yeah.
So, because if someone can actually comprehend there is a problem and it is actually something I can do something about, then they become open to opportunity. They become open to possibility, rather than closed off, closed down, and myopic about the way that they can deal with it. So, oh, well, I've got a headache, so I'll take some paracetamol, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something that's really important, is um, for people to become more open to looking at what's really going on, and starting to listen to their body, and starting to question, why am I feeling like this? Why have I got that pain? What's happened? But I think it's also important to understand as well that sometimes we get a pain somewhere, but the problem's somewhere else. So
Yeah.
it's not always obvious what's going on. And it might be, I've certainly found this within energy healing. I was working with somebody the other day who's been complaining of right knee pain, but in actual fact, the problem, from an energetic point of view anyway, was actually her right hip. And so that, because the right hip needed some work on it, um, that it was almost like the pain was referred from the right hip, if that makes sense. And it was also affected by the left side as well. So, you know, the body, if it's out of balance, if it's structurally out of balance, then it will have an effect on you in the physical. But also, if it's energetically out of balance, and if it's emotionally out of balance, then it tries really hard to show you that you're at dis-ease with yourself. And one of the things that I've found quite fascinating really is, because I've understood about dis-ease, being at dis-ease with yourself for quite some time, but we realized recently, it was a conversation I was having with one of my students, and it popped into us, as these things do, that we can be at disease with ourselves physically, we can be at disease with ourselves energetically, we can be at disease with ourselves subconsciously as well. So, you know, you can be at ease with yourself, with your physical body, even if your physical body's not perfect, you can still be at
Yeah.
ease with yourself, with your physical body, but you might not be at ease with your subconscious self, or your soul. You might not be at ease with your energy, because although your physical body feels okay as it can be at that particular moment in time, there's something going on in the energy that's making you feel uncomfortable. So it's more, it can be quite complex when you start to really kind of delve into it. But it's just really understanding that what we're looking at is to bring people back into a place of ease with themselves on all possible levels.
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. It is a fascinating topic. It's fascinating sort of hearing it from your side of things as well, with what I do when I'm working with clients and looking at, so like you say, so just the, so I had a client who was struggling and they were feeling quite negative, not good enough kind of things going on, and they were walking and they were having pains in the leg when we got talking about things, so pains in the knee. And what it was, or well, part of it was because they were feeling not good enough and didn't want to be seen, then they were actually holding themselves in. So their posture wasn't natural to the human body's way of posturing. So because their posture was sort of closed in, then the body was adjusting to try and compensate for that. So the body was then making these little micro, as you go down the spine and down the body, was making these little micro adjustments to try and get it all balanced out. But it wasn't working. I mean, they were walking. It wasn't that they were noticing anything. But when we actually released the energy of not good enough, they actually started standing up more upright when they were walking, which means that corrected their gait and their knee pain went away. And I didn't do anything with the knee. I didn't do anything physically. It was just going through releasing that belief that they had about themselves, so that they actually felt more positive and more, hey, I'm okay. I can do this. I'm awesome.
That's a really good example of how something emotional and how a belief can affect the physical body. Really
Yeah.
good example.
Well, I remember from my childhood, I mean, I spent the first, I don't know, 20 odd years looking at the ground when I walk, because of the bullying. I mean, we haven't, well, this may come out in a future conversation, but because of the bullying I had at school, because of the bullying that happened when I went to, when I did my apprenticeship and all those sorts of things through my life, then for me, it was like, well, I don't want to be seen, because if I'm seen, people bully me. And there was just that. So although it may or may not have ended up with some of the physical problems I had or have had over the years, but it certainly made me aware of how your emotional state can affect how you are physically, in terms of how you present to the world, how you present yourself, if you like,
Yeah.
and therefore how closed down you can be and the problems that it can cause. Because if I'm walking down looking at the ground, potentially I'm putting my neck, the spinal part of my neck, out of position, but constantly, consistently, regularly, and that can then lead to longer term problems. And remember, I have a trapped nerve, or a trapped nerve in my neck. It could be that that's a result of a physical manifestation of all of those years of me not opening up and being just relaxed and at ease with myself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fascinating,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It's such a fascinating subject when you start to look at the body and how it works. Um, Perhaps another time we can delve into this on a deeper level. I know that we're kind of getting towards the end of our time for today's conversation. It's very easy to run away with ourselves if we're not careful. But hopefully, this has given you a bit of insight into what disease is, and the fact that actually, when you're at disease with yourself, you need to be going inwards. You need to be asking the questions and saying, why is this happening to me? What is it that I need to address? What can I do about this?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want any more further information about it and you want to just reach out and talk to either of us, then please do. The details will be in the show notes under this episode. Well, thank you.
Fabulous. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. Goodbye.
Bye.